Could somebody confirm that you can see the slides?
Yes.
Okay, great. Then here we go. So tonight we're going to be talking about the abstract that you need to write if you want to be a part of the April 1st Student Scholar Showcase. And let me also say, I'm on the outside of this a little bit. So those of you who are still on the committee, if I say something that you need to correct, feel free. I think I've looked at everything and I think what I have to say is correct, but please help me if it's not. I am Dr. Candy Smith. I teach in the School of Teacher Ed. I'm a professor of literacy. I also teach in principal prep. I was a principal for 10 years, and I do love writing, and I really appreciate a good abstract, whether it be in a conference proposal, the conference booklet, or also sometimes we'll see those many times in a peer-reviewed journal, and I'll show you one in just a moment. But I do want to say this to you. Please don't hear me say that this is easy and that writing an abstract is easy. It's difficult. It's very difficult. Writing is difficult. So cut yourself some grace if you have a little trouble with it. I will say I'll be glad if somebody really runs into trouble. I'll be glad to help you if you want to email me. I'm pretty good to get back right away. So you might just identify yourself as I was at the abstract workshop and this is going on. But I hope I'll answer some of your questions tonight as we move through this. So your first interaction between you and the people that you want to come to your presentation or your poster session, whatever it is that you want to do at the research conference, your first interaction between you and those people is your abstract. And so it's short, but it's very important. It's where, for me, when I read an abstract in a conference program, that's how I decide where I'm going. And so you want people to come so that you can share what you've done. And so in order to do that, a good abstract really helps. Now, as I said, those of you who are reading in peer-reviewed journals, and I'm sure many of you are at this point in your education, you almost always see the abstract at the beginning. It's in italics here, and then a conclusion at the end. And I always tell my graduate students especially when they're conducting a lit review, read the abstract, read the conclusion, and then you'll know whether what's in the article is going to be helpful for you or not. And so again, this one's a little bit longer probably than the ones you'll write. And yours is for a conference and this is for an article, but basically the abstract does the same thing. So writing an abstract for the Student Scholar Showcase, and I'm going to be talking mainly about the abstract that describes a research project, but I'll talk a little bit about if you have a presentation, for example, that's not necessarily research, I'll talk a little bit about that at the end. So these are the possible sections to include, and we're going to talk about each one. I would suggest if you are writing an abstract for a research proposal, this would be a good map to follow. And again, we're going to talk about each one separately. And then if you have questions, if you can hold them, I can't see the chat and I can't see you. But if you could hold those until the end, then we can go back and address any that you have. But if something's really, you need to ask it now, please do that in the chat, and Ms. Thompson is going to monitor that for us and let me know. So the research question is how you explain what you're wanting to know. So, and I'm going to show you a past proposal abstract and let you see exactly what they did in theirs. They included all of these sections, but this is where you are trying to decide, or you're giving your audience, you're giving the person reading your abstract information about what you're looking for. Are you trying to address a gap in the literature? Are you adding to the research? Are you doing it for a course that you're in? Are you doing it are you conducting the research for future research that you're going to conduct? And so explain your focus and then explain what your work addresses. So that would be your research question, but I'll show you, you don't have to write that in question form. And I'll show you when we get to the abstract that was in an earlier conference. Then secondly, you definitely need to tell your audience, the person reading your abstract, what your purpose is. So how will knowing this help me as the person who might come to hear what you have to say? You might be conducting the research for yourself and others in the field, but it also might be a public service. I remember one a couple of years ago that I believe I was the judge in the session, and the research was concerning community gardens, and it was real research and they were real community gardens, I believe in Louisville and maybe here, but those are very important. And so that person in their abstract gave us an idea of the importance of the work that I believe it was a she intended to do. Now your methodology, and again, I'm assuming that you're reading research articles probably, and so you probably know this, but you do want to let people know in your abstract whether your research is quantitative or qualitative. That matters to some people. And if you're not sure about those, you can look those up. But quantitative usually involves numbers and statistics and running some programs to see some data points. And then qualitative is more of the research that I do. And that is asking people about things, conducting focus groups, interviewing people. That's more on the qualitative. And then you might have a mixed method where you have some qualitative. I have a doc student right now who has a mixed method going, and she's got some qualitative and some quantitative data that she's going to share. And then you also will tell us in the abstract, those of us who are reading your abstract, what specific instrument you used. And I'll show you again when I show you the past abstract, and how you collected your data and your participants, how you chose them or who participated is important. And then the information collected, don't hold back on this. Sometimes I think people like to write abstracts where they leave us hanging, and they say, come to this session and you'll find out my results. But for your abstract for this particular conference, you want to go ahead and share, because then I see your results and I want to hear more. And so I read your abstract and then I come to your session because I heard your results. It's okay to go ahead and tell the secret at the end, what you found out. So keep that in mind as you present your abstract. And then finally, tying the conclusion, what you found out, back to the research question. So what does the data reveal? Notice here, I do have what do the data reveal, and that's what I should be saying. Those of us in research know that the word data is always plural, and you won't always see it that way, but it's data they. So what do they reveal? So keep that in mind, and that's something you can hang on to as you move on into your careers. So here's an abstract from an earlier conference, and I want us to look and see if we see, and I hope you're on a screen where you can see this well enough. It's not great PowerPoint, but I wanted you to see this abstract. So I'll read it quickly to you, and then if someone wants to answer, or I'll just show you, but I want us to see each of the parts of the abstract. So this is actually someone that I work with, Christina Knoll, and a couple of her students. And notice you'll put your title, and you get to choose the title. You'll put your title in your abstract, and then the sponsoring professor's name goes in the parenthesis. And then here's what it says. Despite inclusion being an internationally recognized system of educating students with disabilities, there continues to be a fracture between theory and practice. This research project compares inclusive special education practices between Limpopo, South Africa, and Kentucky, United States. We interviewed college students in education from both countries about their perceptions of inclusive practices in the classroom. This poster provides themes from the data collected in both countries. So can you tell from there, they didn't put it in the form of a question, but what are they trying to find out? And if somebody wants to unmute and talk, fine. I know it's awkward sometimes in these Zoom. Well, why don't I do the first one, and then maybe you'll be ready to do the next one. So what they're trying to find out is right here. They could have asked this as a question. How do inclusive special education practices in South Africa and Kentucky compare? That would be the research question. So you don't have to form it in a question, but certainly we want to know what are we looking for? What is it that the research is trying to find out? Okay, here's another one. The purpose of the research. Why do we need Dr. Knoll and these students to run this study? Anyone? That's okay. Go ahead, somebody.
Yeah, I think it's mentioned that despite inclusion being an internationally recognized system of educating students with disabilities, there continues to be a fracture between the theory and the practice.
Thank you so much. That's exactly what I believe. Now, there's a little bit of wiggle room here. You could also include a couple of other things, but thank you for that answer. Yes, this is why they're doing it. There's a fracture between theory and practice, and so they're trying to find out what that fracture is. Here's another. How did they do this? And this one, I won't say it's easy, but it might be a little more obvious. How did they collect their data?
Can I answer again?
Sure.
I'm sorry. So they interviewed college students in education from both countries about their perceptions of inclusive practices in the classroom.
Yes, thank you. And I cut it off at just we interviewed college students in education from both countries, because that other part is going to answer something else for us. But definitely, you're right. You're right on it. Thank you. So interviews, that's the methodology. And you might immediately think, well, that would be qualitative, but it's according to what kind of questions are asked in those interviews. If they're electronic and the people answering are actually asked to rate from 1 to 5 how they feel about something, that can be data that can be used quantitatively. So then the results, what information did they collect? Well, actually, this one leaned into the other one, but they collected information concerning the perceptions of inclusive practices in the classrooms in both South Africa and Kentucky. So that's what they were looking for. That's the information that they collected. And then finally, the conclusion, how it connects right back to the question. Not as strong right here, but no abstract is probably perfect. But they do say that there are themes from the data. Maybe a little stronger would be to tell us some of those themes, because this is almost like a tease. Yeah, we've got some themes and we'll share them when you come. But I assure you that it really is fine for you to go ahead and say, for example, they could have said some of the themes that we discovered included this, this, and this. And then that would have let people know if they wanted to attend the poster session. Now, I know I went through those quickly, but I'll be glad to answer any questions you have. But I have this Flesch-Kincaid 13.8 in blue, and I do want to talk to you about that for just a moment. So this is part of the work that I do. But when you write this, it would really be helpful if you would find out what readability level your abstract is. And the way to do that is in Microsoft, 365? And you do have access to that through WKUIT. But right at the bottom where it says document stats, after you've done the other things that the editor suggests, and I would encourage you to always run the editor on this. It's really helpful. I do it always. So you go down to document stats and you click on that, and this box comes up and you tell it okay. And you're in editor, by the way. You've gone to the little brush up here that it looks like a brush to me, but it's lines and a pencil. So you're in editor. And then while you wait, you get these readability statistics. And preferably, I would have a little bit longer. This is only 86 words. We like to have about 450, but still it'll give you an idea of where you are. And you see that second to the bottom line says Flesch-Kincaid grade level, and 13.8 is good. 13.8 is grade level. So we're talking at least a sophomore in college. Actually, when we write at the college level, anything 10 and above is more than acceptable because writing sort of levels off after, although I'm sure there will be some abstracts that could hit 16, 17, which is fine. Graduate students and undergrads who write like that. And some of it has to do, the grade level, the readability level comes from compound complex sentences. So not little short sentences, but longer, more involved sentences and multisyllabic words. So big words. But now if your research project doesn't involve anything that has big words in it to describe it, don't stretch, don't make up something to try to get that Flesch Kincaid up. But I would encourage you in all of your writing to do this. We use it, of course, in literacy, we use it to make sure that if I'm going to ask students in the 7th grade to read a text, I know how difficult it is. And we even tell them this is at a 9.7 readability level, just so they know what they're walking into. And then of course we help them when it's that much above the grade level. But I just wanted to throw that in. I would encourage you to use Editor. Grammarly is fine. Even I'm tired of the advertisements every time I go to watch a video online. But if you have access to Grammarly, I think it's free for a while maybe, but that's also a good program to guide you as you write this abstract and other writing itself. So again, the possible sections to include, here they are. And I hope you'll take a screenshot of that or come back and look at this again when it's posted so that you can review it. And then other types of abstracts, because some of you may not be conducting a research project, and we don't really have time to go into every kind of abstract that would be possible for the conference. But here's one, and again, bad PowerPoint because the font is so small. But this is, I believe it would be an architecture and person and student. And he has created an exclusive resort. And I enjoy these at the poster sessions. I've gone to these before where they show a building that they've designed. They have the renderings, I think they're called there. And sometimes they may have actually built it, but so his doesn't follow the pattern of the ones that I've just described. I say that to say the 2022 conference abstracts are available for you to look through. And I would encourage you, if you're not doing a research project that the abstract I've described would really align with, then I would encourage you to read through those and find one that's similar to what your project is and use that as your model. So don't try to write an abstract for a research proposal if what you're doing is not a research proposal. And it's fine if it's not. There are many interesting, I've seen so many interesting presentations that are not necessarily a research project. I do still believe this is the guideline. You're only permitted to serve as the primary author or presenter on one presentation at the conference. But if I'm remembering correctly, you can be on a group presentation, but you can't be the primary author or the presenter on more than one presentation at the conference. And Ms. Thompson or anybody, do you want to weigh in on that?
Unless rules have changed, that is also how I understand it, Dr.
Okay. That I looked at the website and that's the way it reads. So, but when in doubt, send somebody an email and let them check there for you. And then a few other guidelines. The length of the abstract, it can be no more than 200 words. So again, the one we looked at for Dr. Knoll and her 2 students was 86 words, and that included their names. And so you can see, you can write a good abstract in 100 words, but you can't go over 200. And then I do encourage you to run spell check, editor, and readability. Also check the capitalization. Don't just capitalize words to be capitalizing them, but look in the literature that you're reading. I'm sure if you're doing a research project, you've also read some of the literature of other research. If they capitalize it, then capitalize it. That's how I decide. Sometimes I have a phrase that I'm not sure if it should be capitalized or not, and I go and look at the published works and make sure that I align with that. And then I would encourage you also not to put any contractions in this register of writing that you're doing. The abstract is to be of a very high register, and contractions hurt the readability level. And they're just a little bit familiar for what we're doing here. So I would encourage you at the end, you probably know how to do this, but there's a little search box up at the top of a Word doc. And I would encourage you to write your abstract in a Word doc and go up there and search and make sure, put an apostrophe in, and it will go through and make sure that it shows you where all the apostrophes are. Now you are allowed to use an apostrophe, but that would be more for possessive. But as far as contractions are concerned, try to make sure on your final draft before you submit for the publication that you have eliminated contractions. I would also say try to use the vocabulary that's more professional. I like to have students not use the phrase a lot, A-L-O-T. My English teacher in high school 100 years ago told us that a lot is where you build a house. And so that is slang, and to please leave it out of formal writing. But I say all that just because I want your abstracts to be great. You've spent the time to come to the workshop. And so I want your abstracts to be excellent, and they will be, I'm sure. More information about the abstracts. Let's see what happens here. Thought I might have it. Information on abstract submissions. And you'll find this on the welcome page. And it's very specific. And shows you what the different ways of presenting would be. And there's the link for submitting an abstract. And then you're even provided with an overview of the abstract submission process, which is great. I don't know about you, but I love if I can see before I start into some kind of a form like this, what exactly is going to be asked of me. Also, you can go back in and do some more work with your abstract if you need to. So keep that in mind. It's not a one time and you're finished. If you remember something or somebody reminds you of something, you do have a way to go back in and do a little more work if you need to. And you see, they tell you that if it's a poster session, they have the stands and the poster boards, but you need to make sure that you bring pens or stickies to keep your materials on the board. And then for presentations, PowerPoint, they have access to the projector and a computer for you. Yes, I think, but it's with a computer and a projector in that really small blue box there. All right, let's see if I can get back to the PowerPoint now. And now I would ask you, what are your questions? We have plenty of time, and so feel free to ask any questions that you have. If they're really specific, again, if you want to email me or someone, you see that the contact student.showcase@wku.edu. There are plenty of people that are willing to help you. So with that, I'm going to stop talking and give you a moment to see what are your questions. I can see you a little better now. If you want to put your hand up on the screen or unmute yourself. Ms. Thompson, it appears we don't have any questions. I know you have a couple things to do right here at the end. I will be glad, again, if you think I can answer your question or you want me to look at something for you as far as the abstract is concerned, please feel free to email me. It's Candy with a K. So it's candy.smith@wku.edu. And Ms. Thompson, I'll hand it off to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Smith. You do such a wonderful job with this topic. I really appreciate it. I did put a link, participants, I put a link in the chat. We really need all of you to fill out this post-workshop evaluation, which just helps us to continue to improve the quality of our workshop series year after year. So please take the time to complete that survey. And it looks like we do have one question, Dr. Smith, from Hannah. What would you recommend doing if we will not have all of our data by the abstract submission date, but will before the presentations?
Hannah, that's a great question. And you can just say that in your abstract at the end, just say, data is incomplete or data gathering is still in process, but we will share our findings at the presentation. And you will, if you look through the abstracts from the previous conference 2022, you'll see some that do that. That's a great question. Probably other people need to know that as well.